Hello and welcome, students, in this exam or preparation based YouTube video series. Today, we are going to talk about an important aspect related to defining the tourism. There are two things to be talked about. One is basic definition of tourism, why it is important to frame a definition. It is to understand any concept better, therefore, definitions are required. Definition are based on certain conceptuality and technicality into it, and this is required because without having the proper definition, statistical interpretation may not be made, and further research and further market requirements may not be fulfilled. Therefore, supply and demand may not be fulfilled either. So, let us have a very quick look of understanding the concept related to technicality and the general definition of tourism. So we are going to talk about what is definition of tourism in terms of technical definition. Any definition may be called up as technical one if you are talking about types of tourist, if you are talking about tourist specific activities, and you are talking about certain statistical interpretation into it, and further the legislative purposes into it. And moving to it, most importantly, it should be accredited by United Nations or League of Nations. On the contrary, any definition may be counted up as conceptual definition if at all have got certain anthropological footprint into it, or it may have an understanding of meaning and role of tourism directly. Lastly, but not very casually, it is very important to have or to draw certain impact sort of aspects which are very important to understand this particular or this very concept. As far as one definition of tourism is concerned, today we are going to discuss a very important definition which will gives us an idea about the tourism. According to Herman B. Surrell, he had defined the tourism as a sum total of operators, mainly of economic nature. That meant for he had drawn a line by this definition that he talks about the organized sector in terms of that particular time, 1910, that meant for beginning of 20th century. Then he talked about the economic nature of that meant for it should be a commercial activity, and if you are talking about the nature of economic activity which directly relate to entry, stay, and movement of people, foreigners. So it is basically a definition of the international traveler or international tourist by the name of their their entrance, stay, and movement patterns for the country where he is getting inside and outside. That meant for it should be a temporary visit. So according to Mr. Herman B. Surrell, this definition gives us the more technical into it because it talks about certain aspects related to the statistical pattern, and it's also been derived certain important interpretation of legislative nature also. We as a student of tourism have to incorporate it with several other concepts which are related to tourism in terms of accommodation system. We can state it's a very important phenomena to be talked about. To understand the tourism, we need to understand the concept of the we need to understand the concept of the accommodation practices as well. To be able to understand this particular practice better, we need to understand tourism related accommodation. Accommodation is one of the basic need of the human requirement by which one can fulfill the rest and relaxation process on the travel. So accommodation is the sum total of low budget or different budget hotels class by which one called mankind can satisfy their stay related need along with the other facilities of food and enjoyment. This needs to be there with different types of facilities along with more safety and security into it. Different type of accommodation options are there are different types of options available as per the patterns of the services according to one's budget requirement. It should be whether it should be the higher end budget or lower in budget, it should always be safer for the buyer or a tourist. It should be safer and secure place for staying purpose where the standard services between tourist provider needs to be available. As far as catered accommodation is concerned, anything which can be considered as catered accommodation is generally associated with a number of facilities, including the following facilities: where you are looking for a room where you can enjoy your stay, where you are looking for reception, an area where you can converse it or you can put up your important discussions followed by your staying. You can have restaurant for fooding and bar for beveraging requirement. Housekeeping is an important ingredient to operate with the hotel, entire hotel or accommodation or the concept of stay. Leisure facilities are very important because it makes your your stay as an activity of tourist, gym or health club, conference for the business requirement, and entertainment for the further requirement. Last but not least, we can conversate about hotel. Hotel is of course a place of commercial nature where one can stay, one can hire a room by giving certain amount as per night rule and can avail certain facilities of accommodation related with some other touristic requirement like health, club, crash, etc. as per the category hotels provisions are concerned. One among the important concept into it that is called motel. It's a transport facilities located hotel, or you can state that once you are traveling to the roadside, you find to have your vehicle parked and to have a nice stay, and then you can roam around one more time after having a nice sleep. With having a lot of facilities, the concept of motel comes into existence. And lately, there are non-star or commercial hotel activities which are providing the different kinds of business tourist facilities with low income or middle income groups, having a lot of other alternatives with the restaurant facilities and other client, guest, convention center, meeting centers requirements are concerned. So with this, we are able to understand the concept of accommodation. Accommodation is entirely a system by which, with the help of accommodation and communication system, one can establish the entire system of tourism. As far as today's discussion is concerned, today we are going to talk about an important topic called introduction of transport, or transport as a basic tool by which tourism being flourished. So today our aspect is to understand the mode of transport by which we will understand that tourism had been flourished like anything in the different eras. Development era of transport system in India, we were talking about the three different time period. One is pre-colonial period, colonial period, and post-independence. In such particular division of time, we may be able to understand the concept of development of transport system in India. Pre-colonial era, India have got development of many trade routes by which the India was, or the ancient India was the part of many trade routes altogether. People were traveled throughout the world. They have got many places other than that of the Indian subcontinent where people have got exchange of their goods and other essential commodities. So this is what the time where Mughal periods followed by the the Britishers have conducted certain beneficial act of making transport facilities available. Sirsa Suri created one of the finest road which is an, an in-depth national highway known as Grand Trunk Road, is one of the example in this particular context. So if we are insisting to talk about those different eras transportation development in India, let us have a discussion on a small PPT presentation. In this quest, the colonial era was a time frame where we have witnessed so much of development, especially in the transmitted routes, because Britishers have a thought that they were having a need to connect the India from its different dimensions, and initially they just want to connect the the market area of India with the rest of the world, and therefore the process have make them enable to create certain routes or transport modes. For this particular purpose, to connect India with the Europe, followed by the internal connection of India to their ports, they had established roadways and railways, followed by certain other conceptual services, which is called as the scheduled air services in 1932. In this particular session, we have came across so much of change, but once India have got independent, India have got lot more things to be talked about in terms of transportation development, because in terms of tourism or tourist related transport facilities, India was way back than that of the other countries. So post independence era for the transport development was a time frame where India have to do a lot more things what we have not done initially. The priorities of Indian transport system were changed from independence. Then the reconstruction of highways, especially damaged from the neglected during Second World War. Therefore, rebuilding of transport network to cater roadways development needs, and thus the economic development through the development or connectivity of the entire nation. Attention towards was also paid towards sea and air transport modes development, because it was a great country to be talked about in terms of geography, climate, and different sort of topography. Therefore, to fulfill all such basic requirement of the transportation system, India was looking forward a way ahead towards the most promising destination called accessible destination by the mode of transportation. Prevalent transport system in India is associated with road transport, rail transport, air transport, and water transport. Further, as far as road transportation is concerned, it is what the lifeline of the country. This biggest country of South Asia is actually defined by the its road connectivity into specific mainland. In terms of a road classification into the country, there are other types of highways followed by national highways, state highways, district road, village road, or unclassified village road. As far as total national highways strength is concerned, national highways are the principal aerial routes connecting to the union major cores with the various highways throughout the states of the countries. It constitutes 2% of total road network, approximately more than the 10 lakh kilometers of 1988's record. According to 2013 data, more than 2.7% of total road network being constituted by national highways. That is a great amount of proportion being covered. As far as national highways authorities are concerned, NHAI is known for the establishment of the roads and to be able to make our country more fast forward towards the road transportation. National highway constitutes 2.7% of India's total road network, but it carries out 40% of the road traffic as per 2013's record. If you go through the history of the national highways of India, it have got a deep root history. It comes into the existence by 1988, and further it has been transformed and upgraded by the name of National Highway Development Project (NHDP) in 1988, and been converted into different segments. So, as the state highways which are connecting the city or cities, those are more popular, or the, the capital city of this that state to the metros of the country or the national capital area. These are also very important highways by which the entire local community can be connected throughout districts. So, as the rail transport, it is one of the magnificent railway model which world had been witnessing nowadays. After independence, 8,000 kilometers of new railway route have been added into the railway network. The present route length of Indian Railways is around 68,155 kilometers, out of which 64% of all broad gauge road is electrified as by 2020. As far as Indian Railways is concerned, where we have three types of gauges you have been through, that is broad gauge, which is 1.67 meter gauge. Uniqueness of this gauge by the 1 meter breadth, and narrow gauge there are two typical type, 0.76 and 0.61 meter. If we talk about the history of Indian Railways, it is also one of the fantastic history around that. In India, Britishers never tried to bring the railways for the betterment of the common man of India. Rather, they had introduced this as a requirement of their business. In American subcontinent or American continent, there was a disaster in terms of weather conditions, and that makes the raw material unavailable to the England. So they were looking for the cotton, which was not there through America. Nowadays, at that point of time, they look forward to the subcontinent, and here comes the story of Indian Railways came across. But it was not that much easy, because Britishers were initially not agreed to start up the Indian Railways, because they were finding it an inappropriate as far as climate and the demography of and topography of India. But further, after the sudden changes and requirement of their own, the introduced Indian Railways, followed by certain other big benchmarks. Within that, Greater Indian Peninsular Railway played a vital role with the help of Sri Jamsetji Jijibhai and Sri Jagannath Sankares, known as Nana Sankar Seth, and they were the two names who had tried to establish Indian Railways as per the requirement. And as far as the first railway movement in India, it was 16th April 1853, where first commercial train runs between Bombay and Thane. And as far as railways history is concerned, it is one of the magnificent history in the world history, so as in the Indian history. We have completed this special series video in this preparation of exam time. So you please go through this video and put your answers in the description box mentioned link, and try to work out for self-assessment. Till then, it's good night.